I wish everybody happy new year, and we enter to the last section of our T.S. Eliot. That I mentioned already that we have two particular tools that he brings out to be used in the poetry, especially in dramas, that he explains what is called objective correlative method, and the other one is disassociation of sensibility. These two concepts are somewhat complex, but we can make it very, very easy, because this is the same thing that you study in the 5th module as a different modes of operative system in the poetry. Now, how emotion is expressed in poetry is concerned. T.S. Eliot does not have that much interest to show the emotion is implied in the section of the poetry. The concepts first introduced, he had criticized Shakespeare's Hamlet. Hamlet is a great tragedy. Now has been criticized. If you come to know, almost 50,000 critics have criticized. T.S. Eliot also criticized Hamlet written by Shakespeare, or no other books or no other dramas have ever been written by these 50,000 people's criticism on hand. 80 to 90% people appreciate Hamlet written by Shakespeare is great and greater than greatest. But T.S. Eliot says this is an artistic failure. Hamlet is a tragedy. Hamlet as a tragedy is an artistic failure. Why? Because the objective correlative that Shakespeare as a dramatist uses in different tragedies does not appear in Hamlet. And what is this concept? This concept, so first, this concept of objective correlative appears in his criticism on Hamlet. That plainly he says at the end it is an artistic failure. It does not give much artistic imagination or artistic pleasure to the reader or the spectator in the drama. And why he says so is a matter. For that purpose he says objective correlative things. And what is it that to be explained? A very important critique on T.S. Eliot, what is, I told Cleanthbrook. Cleanthbrook says objective correlative has gained an acceptance probably far beyond anything that the author could have expected. Means what? T.S. Eliot did not expect that much acceptance on this term will be given by the society or by the critics in future. In such a way, objective correlative as a mode, a method, a version that he has been developing. Idea is taken, this real objective correlative idea, the notion, the concept is taken from French symbolist writers Hume and Pound. They argued poetry cannot express emotion directly. So T.S. Eliot is also on the opinion that emotion cannot be directly applied to the field of poetry. But in 19th century, as you know, that we have already explained, in 19th century, Wordsworth and Coleridge and Shelley, Byron, lot of Keats, John Keats, all those poets were based on, all those poets were behind emotions. And Wordsworth's own definition was emotions recollected in tranquility. So he thought the real concept of poem is emotion. But our poet T.S. Eliot in 20th century, he does not give much prominence, much significance for emotion. So this emotion cannot express directly. Eliot uses how emotion is best expressed in poetry. It cannot be easily transmitted. Poet says the emotion that as such a word in 19th century were romantic poets perceived. Such a concept easily cannot be applied in or transmitted in the poetry. The mind of the poet, and it is not easily transmitted from the mind of the poet to the poem. Just like what we study in Plato's philosophy. No artist, the real thing, because its reality is always lost. Why? The theory that you might have studied twice removed from reality. Plato says what? Once artist makes a concept on a coconut tree from the reality, it comes to the mind of the artist first, and from the mind of the artist it goes to canvas. Means what? 2 times removed from reality. Coconut tree from the nature, first moment it comes to the mind of the artist, and from the mind of the artist to the canvas. Means what? 2 times it is removed from reality. Means what? It is a reality lost. In the same way, the emotions transmitted from the reality, from the mind of the poet to the poem, when it goes to the poem, its originality lost. And it is not easy to communicate or to transmit what? Emotion from the mind of the poet to the poetry. It has to turn itself into the something concrete, picture of a person. Suppose a picture of a person, yes, picture of Vasco da Gama, or picture of Mahatma Gandhi. All right, through the lines it is written by the poet. Sometime the emotion transmitted from the mind of the poet. Own Mahatma Gandhi as a picturization coming in the poem may not be happening in the real way. So the reader may not get as much pleasure as he expected, because the emotion is not being transmitted step by step from the mind of the poet to the poem. Or whether it may be a person, or whether it may be a place, whether it may be a thing. All right, many things are there, just like daffodils or the rainbow by the poet Wordsworth. Rainbow, he says in the previous class we saw, his heart leaps when he sees a rainbow on the sky. Or on the other hand, behold her single in the field on solitary highlandless. He finds a solitary girl on the paddy field in solitary reaper. Is a person, the person on whom Wordsworth as a poet has a lot of emotions, but which are not transmitted in the proper way. Poet might have kept a lot of ideas about solitary reaper or rainbow as an object, but had been kept in the mind. But these mind's concept of what is called emotion transmitted from his mind to the canvas-like pages of book, and he writes a poem, the lines of the poem, which may not give that much spirit of emotion, what he transmitted from his mind to the lines of the poem. may not be feasible for the reader. This person, T.S. Eliot, in the critical study, tradition and individual talent, he says, the object in which emotion is bodied forth, this object in which an emotion is transmitted, that emotion, when it is transmitted on the object or the person or the thing, will be called objective correlative. Just like he says, all right, why artistic failure in the look here, oh, Lady Macbeth appearing, great tragedy, Macbeth, unconscious repetition of her past action. You keep in mind, unconscious repetition of her past activities, which would become an objective correlative for her. And her mental agony is seen always. The state of mind walking in the sleep is communicated by a skillful accumulation of imagined sensory impression. So what does it mean? It means all those activities of emotions, what she had been collectively doing in her past, would become a concept of objective correlative in her mind. That would be making that character in Macbeth to talk and even sleep in the walk. T.S. Eliot reminds in this tradition and individual talent. So such objective correlative is not found in Hamlet. On the one hand, in Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, her action and her activities showing objective correlative. But on the other hand, we do not find such objective correlative collecting the emotion from his own life and inputting in the lines of his utterances. May not be happening. So Hamlet is an artistic failure. T.S. Eliot says, so though a masterpiece, Hamlet is considered to be a masterpiece of Shakespeare, but considered artistic failure. It gives only pleasure when you see the drama in the theatre. But after going, that emotion that you collected in the theatre will be losing, our poet says. Eliot is criticized by Elisco Vivas, a particular modern critic. Whenever T.S. Eliot criticized Hamlet in this way, another critic, Elisco Vivas, his name is Elisco Vivas, he says, artist knows in advance the particular emotion for which he makes objects. All the artists know what is to be talked, what is to be this artist, what talks on the stage is uttered by the writer or the director or the writer or script writer. So script writer's emotions and ideas would be transmitted to the actor. Elisco Vivas, applying this theory on T.S. Eliot, remarks, emotions expressed in a poem can neither be exclusive interest to the reader, and these emotions which are transmitted to the poem may not be always pleasing for the reader. Sometimes it may please, it sometimes may not please. Poem is like a growing plant. Elisco Vivas telling, poem is like a small plant we plant on the field. Naturally it grows towards the light. When there is that you have studied SR theory in the primary classes, stimulus response theory, right? When the sunlight coming, trees have a tendency to grow in this way. So poem is just like a tree which grows towards the sunlight. It goes to sunlight, and unless it interfered with, it tends to grow straight. If there is anybody doing some critical or the method by which it stops or hinders its growth. Then tree like a poem has nothing to do but to grow like by the interpreters. So it is just like if it is allowed to grow naturally, it will grow. If there are hindrances, there will be, then it has a tendency to stop its growth. This is what is called objective. So what you have to keep in mind, objective correlative is a tool as a method by which emotions collected should be transmitted to the poem or to the poem, just like what we have that emotion to be kept in the correct way. But the emotion transmitted from the poem, from the poet to the poem is not real, our T.S. Eliot says. The second concept he brings out here, disassociation of sensibility. Disassociation of sensibility. That is a minor topic. First used in T.S. Eliot is essays, metaphysical poets. You know that you have studied metaphysical poets. Metaphysical poets, they are somebody, they take ideas from metaphysics. The world of spirituality, they do not find anything in the materialism. They go in the spiritual way. Their philosophy is always people find it difficult to explain. So there is a tendency that in the metaphysical method, metaphysical poem or metaphysical thoughts, this disassociation of sensibility appears. To point out the characteristic of fault in the 17th century, opposite this phrase, disassociation sensibility can be opposed by unification of sensibility. The procedure, this produce good poetry, cause bad poetry, disassociation sensibility. Then unification of sensibility means what? It directs sensuous apprehension of thoughts. It says apprehension of thoughts. There the poem is emotionally equality of thought. Combination of thought and emotion is essential. That you keep underline. Combination of thinking or thought and emotion to be kept together in the poem, because these are essential to a poem. So you keep in mind not only emotion wanted, but thought-provoking ideas should be there. A philosopher may versify his ideas, but he will remain only a philosopher and not a poet. So many philosophers are there in the world. They will be giving you a lot of philosophies, syllogistic philosophies, or didactic philosophies, lot of philosophies. But they remain only philosophers, not poets. But the poets who give philosophies will remain poetic philosophers. That is the thing. If he wants to be a poet, he must see his ideas are transmitted into sensation and emotion. So poet who wants to be a philosopher will give a transmission of his ideas to a sensation and emotion. So reaching to sensation and emotion will make a poet always a philosopher. A poet should convert his ideas into feelings. Some poets do have ideas and not emotion. Browning is like that. Robert Browning, he is not a poet. T.S. Eliot says. T.S. Eliot, Robert Browning, you might have studied some dramatic monologues. T.S. Eliot says as a modern critic, Browning is not a poet at all. All the characteristics of what T.S. Eliot maintains are not seen in Robert Browning's poems. T.S. Eliot says. His thought and emotion are separate. Because Robert Browning's Robert Browning's disassociation of sensibility, because sometimes he will be deviating from the main idea what he is drawing from the beginning. When he reaches to the end, his sensibility will be losing. Why? Because there is no unification. This unification of sensibility is a must. But wherever we find so many poets, including Robert Browning, all right, in Victorian age, people write this type of disassociation of sensibility. They keep in the mind a regression of thought into feeling. Poets and people would have kept a lot of thoughts, but these thoughts should be converted to a feeling. Not a feeling by the poet, but it is a feeling felt by the reader. If the reader feels a real thought, that is a feeling. This feeling is considered to be there from the beginning to the end of the poem, what is called disassociation of sensibility. So what did we understand? T.S. Eliot as a critic has brought out two particular objective tools. One is called objective correlative method, and the other one is disassociation of sensibility. This disassociation of sensibility is a tool that he uses in almost his poems, or these two are the parameters by which T.S. Eliot criticizes all the poets, including Shakespeare or including Robert Browning and others. So poets have to keep objective correlative, the emotion that he took from the nature to be transmitted to his poem through the lines that should be enjoyed by the reader. This is what T.S. Eliot means by two concepts. What is objective correlative on the one hand, disassociative sensibility on the other hand. So let us conclude our T.S. Eliot as a critic. During that area that we covered, almost whatever given in the syllabus, all right, then you cover all these areas. First topic, we took a historical sense, impersonality theory, then poetic emotion, objective correlative method, then dissociation sensibility. With all these minor topics, we consider our T.S. Eliot as a critic. Tradition and individual talent is finished. And now by next class, let us go to Matthew Arnold as another critic, and we will have Arnold as a critic in a lengthy manner. Till that moment, I give you goodbye. Thank you.